All right, we got the shielding off. Now, one thing to note is this cable here is one of those horrible 90s ribbon cable connectors. I hate these. They're used in the laser active, and I just would try not to even touch this. They separate the wires inside, and it's a nightmare to get them back in place usually. I mean, it might not be too bad with just one of them, but I still have nightmares about working on laser actives from those.
You can really just move it out of the way. The only thing to be careful about is make sure that you're not shorting something on this board.
Yeah, when you don't want to power it up when it's like all taken apart. So yeah, some really interesting stuff in here. This is actually being a Sega fanboy here, I got to give props. So this looks like a very nicely produced board. They could have totally cheaped out on a kid's unit, and they did not.
Look at this, 1994.
94.
So they must have had it done for a couple of years before they released it.
Pico main. Pico. Are you sure the Pico started in '96?
I thought it was. I can look it up.
But let's see what's going on here. So we have a 315. 5640. Interesting. So that's a variant of the Genesis 2 ASIC. The Genesis 2 ASIC is a 5660. That actually might be a compatible variant. That'd be interesting. If we look over here, 315 5841. I would be pretty surprised if that wasn't a Z80. It actually is bused to the 68K over here, just like a Z80 would be. Those are the bus lines that it uses normally.
I was wrong. It's 94.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So here we have a 68K. It's a standard 68K. It's an 8 megahertz, just like the Genesis 2 uses. So far, everything in here is Genesis 2 hardware. Not surprising, but still cool. And then if we look over here, we actually have the same op-amp setup that a Genesis 2 has. I mean, very similar. It's two dual, or these are quads. These are two quad op-amps. My guess is they're probably also used to produce a voltage reference, or they're dependent on the voltage reference that the encoder uses.
That's Sony.
That's the same Sony encoder that all the regular older Genesises use. Genesi CXA1145M. That's the older variant. The CXA 1645 was the newest one they ever put into Genesis, and Saturns actually used them. Then over here we've got some RAM, of course. I believe that's going to be the work RAM. And what else do we have got going on? 315-5313A. Oof, I'm trying to remember what chip that is.
Let me look it up.
That might actually go to a 32X.
Oh, that would be interesting. I mean, it's contemporary, right? 94?
Yeah. This is VRAM. Pretty sure that's going to be your VRAM. Oh, it could be another work RAM, but it looks like a VRAM. I could look all this stuff up instead of speculating. Don't trust me on the RAMs. I just almost positive those are RAMs, but I can't tell you for sure. The crystal is clocked at 53 megahertz, just like a Genesis 2. This chip, I'm curious about. I do not know what that chip is. 315. It actually looks, the packaging and the type. You know, this is using the Sega CD, right? 315. Search. I'm trying to remember where that's from. It's not the. Is it the Sega CD?
It's a video processing unit of the Genesis.
Ah, okay, that's what's going on. So they're using Genesis 1. This is Genesis 1 hardware. This is the video processor that was used in the first revision of the Genesis. This might be, look up this one. 315-5640. I'm surprised they'd be using that as late as 94, except of course they're repurposing hardware. So they probably had a bunch of these chips left over after they produced the Genesis 2. They don't need the Genesis 1 chips anymore. That's pretty cool. And then we got to find out what that one last one is, because I'm super curious.
Apparently that's for the drawing pad.
But what else? It's got to be used in something else.
I mean, there's a similar chip.
Not a similar. 315-5640.
Well, what you're probably thinking of is 5660.
Yeah, it is what I'm thinking of. That's why I'm like, but wasn't the 5640 used in something else at some point? It seems like
everything I'm seeing about it is Pico.
It's Pico related, okay.
And it's the touchpad controller from whatever they said.
Oh, it's a touchpad. Okay, then it's a custom. Okay, interesting. So that's really interesting. That means this was in development before the end of the Genesis 2 lifespan, and they actually bumped this model number of that ASIC and then bumped it again later for the Genesis 2, and then again for the Nomad, because the 5700 is the Nomad. That's pretty sweet. So it's actually a mixture. It's like this weird, you got some Genesis 1 parts, mostly Genesis 2, and then kind of a mid-range custom chip that's in between the lifespans of both.
Interesting.
And then you have the older video chip, but then in the smaller package type. And then you have the standard quad op amp setup. This chip is what I'm really curious about.
What is the number? I can't read it.
I'm having a hard time reading it too. We might check it out off camera, but it looks like I'm guessing that it might be a PCM chip.
3155769.
No, that's not going to be. I mean, that might be what it is, but that's not PCM if that's what it is.
Yeah, 3155769.
We'll look it up. And then I'm almost positive this is going to be the Z80.
5769. Have we identified the sound chip?
No, that's the sound chip. If it's not being used from, if it's not incorporated into this one.
Oh, into the bigger AC.
Yeah. But that makes sense. This is your main Genesis. That's almost positive that's going to be your VRAM. This, of course, is your 7805. Real nice heatsink design. Actually, this is the best heatsink design I've probably ever seen in a Sega console. Normally, there's, they don't necessarily ground it to the frame really well like this one is. This was actually taking some design cues from the PC Engine, it looks like.
Oh, this is interesting. Apparently, it is something specific to Pico, because I'm seeing only references to it in the MAME dev.
Interesting.
Sound is the 315-5641 D77591. Should be compatible with the 7759, but probably wants us to maintain an external buffer.
Huh.
Interesting. So it's not a normal Genesis sound chip.
Interesting. So you have a custom sound chip and a custom keyboard, or not keyboard, whatever you call it, touchpad.
Yeah.
The touchpad being custom makes sense, but I'm not sure why they would do custom sound. Why would they go to the trouble for a kid's unit like this?
I don't know. I was trying to figure out, because it doesn't sound exactly like... I wasn't hearing any of that like buzz that you typically get from the Yamaha when I was listening to the music. It sounded more like the Master System. What is it called? The PSG, right?
Yeah.
It was sounding more like the PSG, but then it has voice, which sounds like Genesis Yamaha voice. Like it's got that same kind of compressed voice sound.
That makes sense why they did a custom. That makes sense why they would do a custom, because they're trying to get a cheap way to do voice, an inexpensive way to do voice without doing a full PCM setup.
There is a lot of voice in it, for sure, in the one game I have.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, they did a custom sound because they wanted to get, the voice for the kids to get excited about hearing Big Bird or whatever.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we've figured out quite a lot. The one other thing, this is not a huge deal, but I'm kind of curious what that is.
What is the number on it?
55F. It looks like
is that a Motorola?
Might be a relay. It's not a chip. I mean, it's some kind of weird passive part. It looks like an opto-coupler controller, or maybe a relay or something, or some weird kind of encapsulated capacitor. But it's an interesting part. I'm not sure what it is. Aside from that, everything's pretty standard. Sega likes to do these inductor kind of LC filters for power, which seems to work pretty well. I do really like this 7805 design. I think this is great with these screw terminals right here like this, and everything's it really keeps the heat from getting trapped around the capacitors quite as much.
I'm not seeing a reference to that, so I'm going to search for the, on the mask there, R19.
You're probably not going to find anything on this. Yeah, I wouldn't even bother.
No, that R19 is that tiny.
Good grounding plane. Good use. Always excellent use of the grounding plane.
Is it R22 or is it CF1? I think it's actually CF1.
But yeah, that's it for this. Thanks for checking this out. Sega Pico hardware hacking. Well, not really hacking. We're just tearing down.
Oh, question. Do you think you could RGB mod this shit?
Absolutely. Yeah, if it's using a CXA 1145, you can do an RGB mod because that's how this chip functions. It takes RGB signals and converts them for your into composite for NTSC and PAL. Not only is it going to do RGB because of this chip, but my guess is this is a VDP. This is the same VDP that Genesis 1 uses, so it's going to output RGB natively. Same VRAM, same VDP. So yeah, you should be able to actually pull up the RGB points pretty easily. In fact, I can show you where they are right now. I can see them. These traces running down here. There's a few of them. That's your RGB lines. They come out from this side of the chip right here, because I remember that when I hacked Genesis 1 before. And then this is your resistor divider networks that they use. It's kind of these RC inputs for RGB on those chips. Standard, 75 ohm termination kind of stuff. 0.1 microfarad input capacitance. And there you go. So yeah, you can hack it for RGB, and probably can't do any cool sound stuff with it because it's a custom sound chip. So sorry, all you chip tune makers. You're going to have to do your hipster Pico jams with a little more work if you want to do them.
I also want to note real quick, if you look at the back here, the model number, MK49002. So it generally fits with the naming convention of Sega hardware at the time, MK something or other.
Yeah, and that's the serial number. So if yours breaks and you want to steal ours to get the warranty covered, you can totally do that.
Also, made in Malaysia.
Yeah, all the later stuff was Mexico, Malaysia. The stuff made in Japan, they kind of stopped doing that pretty early on. But yeah, good quality engineering. I would expect no less from Sega. This is a shocker, because this is Segasonicfan signing out.